Okay, folks, we're going to come out of closed session right now. Councillor Chichuk, you're going to have that resolution to come out of closed session, please.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Trombetta that this meeting does now resume in open session at the hour of 7:40.
Councillors, you've heard the resolution to come out of closed session, moved by Councillor Chichuk and seconded by Councillor Trombetta. Seeing no comments or questions, all those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, is there any members to request to address items on the agenda? Any members of the gallery wishing to request items on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to appointments and presentations. Mr. Arians, John Arians is here to speak. He's here to speak about the zoning bylaw amendment application for Gerald and Paige Kelt, file number 1601-013-17, landscape nursery and contractor at 8237 20 Road. This is planning report PD 07418, and it's a request for a referral. Mr. Arians, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm here this evening to discuss item P72-18 of the May 14th Planning Committee agenda. I'm here to ask you, with all due respect, not to accept the recommendation of the committee, which was to deny the application, and instead to refer it back to planning staff for further consultations. We wrongfully assumed that the application would be tabled at that planning committee meeting. That was not a statutory public meeting. It was a recommendation report. There were no listed delegations or registered delegations at that meeting, so we assumed, and wrongfully so obviously, that the deferral would be granted and that the matter would be referred back to staff. Please understand that when we read the staff report, that we had further liaison with the owners, we had further liaison with Mr. Treble and the planning staff, and we felt that there was room for an additional compromise on this particular application. We felt additional time was warranted to meet with staff further. I understand the primary concern was the scale of the operation as opposed to the principle of the operation, and we felt that it was indeed possible to still reduce the intensity of the use, reduce the scale, so that this business would better fit within the agricultural community which it's located within. In discussing it with staff, Mr. Treble thought it was a reasonable request, I guess, for us to continue and to meet further on and continue fine-tuning the application. And for that reason, I wrongfully assumed that the deferral would be granted. Again, it wasn't a statutory public meeting. There were no registered delegates. I've done this with numerous other municipalities where we work with staff. We come to a kind of an agreement that there would be a deferral. And then obviously we were wrong, and for that I do apologize to members of council. Now our clients are asking for zoning permission which would allow them to continue to establish a nursery on this property, to establish a greenhouse business, and to establish and to continue with their landscape contracting business on this 15-acre parcel on 20 Road. The staff report that was before Planning Committee acknowledges and accepts the fact that such a use can in fact be considered in your agricultural area as on-farm diversification. Provided, however, the use is less intense and perhaps more closely tied to agriculture. So those were the two key objections in the staff report, and that's what we really want to focus on with planning staff. Our clients are in the process of establishing their nursery. They are there to reduce the scale and intensity of the landscape business, thereby fully complying with the provincial guidelines dealing with permitted uses in prime agricultural areas. The landscape, the nursery business is considered on-farm diversification, and it's compliant with the provincial objectives and the provincial policies. We've even proposed to staff that the use only be given a temporary use bylaw. Now, if you know temporary use bylaws, they're valid for 3 years, and it's like a testing period We know that these folks established the use without permissions. I'm fully aware of that. And to keep their feet on the fire, to keep them in line, a temporary use bylaw is in fact appropriate. They have 3 years to prove that they're going to grow the nursery stock, they're going to have the greenhouse business, and the landscape business will not be the key component. So a temporary use bylaw, together with reducing the scale and intensity, will make sure that this use perfectly fits within the context, and that the use currently and as proposed would fit within your permissions and your expectations. So as I indicated, the proposed use is permitted by in prime agricultural areas by the province. It provides for on-farm diversification, it provides employment, and it contributes to the local economy. And on top of that, you've not yet heard from the applicants. There is no significant need to deal with this application without the owner's input. There are no health or safety issues at play. The business does not create compatibility issues. I know that one resident spoke and he was concerned that he went to the countryside because of the peace and quiet. Well, with all due respect, an agricultural area is far from peaceful and quiet. It has many of the attributes of a heavy industrial area: slow-moving equipment, noise, dust, odors, vibration. That's part of an agricultural community. And as I indicated, there are no health or safety issues with this operation. So there really was no pressing need for this application to be dealt with and not be referred back. So while you have every right to make the decision that you've made, we respectfully, again, ask for the matter to be deferred, to send it back to staff for further considerations so that the owners can make a better fit and have the matter returned to a subsequent planning committee, hopefully later this summer, as soon as possible. So again, my apologies for assuming that the referral would be automatic. I shouldn't have done that. We respectfully ask that you give the applicants a little more time to make this matter work and that you refer the application back to staff. So those are my submissions.
Okay. There might be a few questions or comments, but my direction would be to ask staff to ask councilors to ask you when the item actually comes up, if that's okay. Comes up on the
Whatever
floor.
your pleasure is, sir.
Okay.
I'm here for as long as you need me.
Unless you read. And it comes up under the planning minutes, yes.
Item D.
Yes, public meetings under the Planning Act. If you could. And if you could, Councillor, if you want to talk to it, you have to pull it, so that way I know it's going to get pulled. When we do planning minutes, yes. Yeah, okay. I think we're good.
Thank you, sir.
Stay tuned. Okay, we'll move on to confirmation of minutes, council minutes, regular April 23rd, 2018. Councillor Gannan, you have that resolution, please.
I do, thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bell that the minutes of the open session portion of April 23rd, 2018 regular council meeting be accepted.
Thank you. Councillors, you've heard the resolution moved by Councillor Gannan and seconded by Councillor Bell. Any comments or questions? I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. That was 8A that we just completed. 8B, council minutes, special, May 25th, 2018. Confidential minutes are under separate cover. Councillor Rayner, you have that resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Jason Trombetta that the minutes of the open session portion of the May 25th, 2018 special council meeting be accepted, and that the confidential minutes relating to the closed session portion of the May 25th, 2018 special council meeting be accepted, and that the minutes remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with exemptions provided in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Thank you, councillors. You've heard the resolution. Moved by Councillor Rayner, second by Councillor Trombetta. Before we go to comments and questions, the clerk would like to make an amendment, please.
Through you to members of council, we require an amendment because of an incorrect listing under the members of council that were present at the meeting. We need to correct it to properly reflect the absence of Councillor Chichok and Councillor Rayner and the attendance of Councillor Bell. So if we could have a mover and a seconder.
Councillor Boswell will move that. Councillor Gannan will second that.
And that would be the amendment.
Okay. Seeing no, Comments or questions? Councillor Bosma, go ahead.
Well, since you brought it up, and it was kind of a concern of mine, can Councillor Rayner even move the overall motion since he wasn't even in attendance? It's usually a bit of a point of,
Through you, members of council, that is an issue when we are dealing with planning matters. This is just putting minutes on the table. If there's any corrections that are to be made, he could still move it, but another member of council will make that notation.
okay, all right.
So it's small in nature, so it can be done, I guess is what I'm hearing then, right, Madam Clerk? Okay. Seeing no more comments or questions, I'll call the vote on the amendment. And that is carried. Now, the original motion as amendment, is there any, I'm going to ask for comments or questions first. As amendment? As amended. Is that amended or as amendment?
As amended.
As amended, thank you. Seeing no comments or questions, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Madam Clerk, are you going to give me that one, that form so I can sign it, or
Which one?
the amendment?
The amendment?
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to C, Public Meeting 911 Public Emergency Reporting Services, otherwise known as PERS, addressing remediation of Dufferin suffix correction. This is May 14, 2018 minutes. Councilor Trombetta, you have that resolution, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Chichuk that the minutes of the public meeting held on May 14, 2018 with respect to 911 Public Emergency Reporting Services, PERS, PERS, addressing remediation to Dufferin suffix correction be accepted.
Councilors, you've heard the resolution. Moved by Councilor Trombetta and seconded by Councilor Chichuk. So the actual Dufferin suffix here that we're going with is what, Madam Clerk? Mr. Tribble?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there will be a staff recommendation report to June Planning Committee, and I believe it will say Dufferin Street.
Dufferin Street. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. Carried. Okay, we'll move on to communications. There are no communications for tonight. Sorry, D.
We're not having any.
Nothing about tonight is going smoothly. Not one thing. Must be the temperature. Public meetings under the Planning Act, May 14, 2018 minutes. Councillor Bell, you have that resolution, please.
Yes, I do. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Godin that the minutes of the public meeting held on May 14, 2018 under Section 34 of the Planning Act with respect to proposed amendment to the Township of West Lincoln zoning bylaw, Bear Creek Farms Limited, file number 1601-005-18. B, proposed amendment to the Township of West Lincoln zoning bylaw, housekeeping amendments to comprehensive zoning bylaw. And C, proposed amendment to the Township of West Lincoln zoning bylaw amendment, Township of West Lincoln's revisions to medical marijuana provisions to the comprehensive zoning bylaw.
Thank you. Councillors, you've heard the resolution. Moved by Councillor Bell and second by Councillor Ganan. Is there any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? It's carried. Okay, we'll move on to Mayor's remarks. Just let me get my notes in front of me here real quickly. Here are my Mayor's remarks for the month of May 2018. The Niagara Regional Police have a new top cop for 8th District, and his name is Staff Sergeant Romulo Digidios. It's hard to say, Digidios. I met with Staff Sergeant last week off-site at Wellandport Deli to discuss policing issues here in West Lincoln. Rome, as he likes to be called, is no stranger to West Lincoln, as he spent many years as a rookie cop here in West Lincoln patrolling our back country roads. So, he knows firsthand of the speeds that people drive through our municipality, very much aware of that, very upset about that. He very much knows how geographically vast our municipality is and how the criminal element like to hide in our rural areas. Rome also believes that cops should very much be visible throughout the municipality and that social media can and should play a big part in community policing. Staff Sergeant Romulo De Gidios rides an NRP police motorcycle himself, and he claims that he will be very visible throughout West Lincoln as he comes from the traffic division of the Niagara Regional Police. On Saturday, May 12th, at the Legion Villa, I will be very brief about this because I know that there are members of council that would like to speak about this too, but we do have a new service club here in town. They are called the Kiwanis, and that Saturday was their charter night. It was a successful night. Kiwanis, as they're known, came from all across Ontario. Many thanks to the St. Catharines Kiwanis Club, as they are our sponsorship committee. And they, as I understand it, they were very generous in their tutelage along the way, held our hands, and we're thankful for that. It was a great turnout, and it was an absolutely great night for the Kiwanis Club of West Lincoln. I'll move on to say that the West Lincoln Chamber Business Awards Banquet will be held tomorrow at the West Niagara Agriplex. They start at 11 o'clock. They've been working very hard on this, the Chamber of Commerce, trying to get all of the businesses across West Lincoln to put forth their nomination. Nominations have been picked, and we will find out tomorrow who are the winning businesses for 2018. This is the very first West Lincoln Chamber Business Awards Banquet, their inaugural event. Also tomorrow, St. Martin's will be having their official blessing tomorrow night, along with an open house. 6 o'clock is the start. I know that Father Chris will be there, and I believe Bishop Burgee will be there too as well to bring forth the official blessing for our new St. Martin's Catholic Elementary School. I do want to talk about Evans Ride for Autism. This is an event that's coming up on June the 9th. It is the 10th year for Evans Ride for Autism. It starts at 9 o'clock, and it happens at the Sheldrake yard on Thompson Avenue in our industrial park. If you're looking to make a pledge, you can go online to do it, or you can do it the old-fashioned way and print off a pledge form and get your pledges that way. It's a very good time, and 10 years is a long time for any type of ride like that to happen. So we're very thankful and very appreciative to the Sheldrake family and Evans Ride for Autism. And last but not least, I'd like to read out the media release. It was a special day on Friday. The Witt family came forth with $500,000 for our new arena complex. If I could, I'd like to read the media release. It says, Together a Vibrant Tomorrow Capital Campaign announces a $500,000 donation from Stampak Incorporated in support of the new Community Recreation Center. The new multi-use recreation center will be a modern, efficient, environmentally conscious facility that is physically accessible and welcoming for all. Situated in the heart of the community at the old fairgrounds, adjacent to the arena, the site is walkable for many, boasts ample parking, and space for potential expansion. It says it has something for everyone. Rebuilding in the heart of the community, the new Community Recreation Center will have something for everyone, anchored by a state-of-the-art library and a regulation-size arena. The Community Recreation Center will include a regulation-size single-pad ice surface with 450 seating capacity, 12,500 square feet of a square-foot flagship library, a walking track both inside and outside, a multi-purpose gymnasium, also known as our wellness center, multi-purpose rooms or meeting rooms. Outside, it will feature a skateboard park, splash pad, outside walking trail, and is designed to accommodate growth for the next 50 years. The 52,000 square foot Community Recreation Center will become a hub of community activity, promoting healthy, active lifestyles where people of all ages come together, where families and neighbors can gather and interact for generations to come. I will read quotes from two people. One is the chair of the committee, Mr. Chris Fear. He says, thanks to a generous community, the $1.5 million Together a Vibrant Tomorrow capital campaign is off to a quick start with 43% of its goal committed in the first few months. The campaign will wrap up by the end of the year, says Chris Fear, campaign chair. The second quote comes from a member of the Witt family. the youngest of three boys. Matt Witt, he says, as the largest employer in the Township of West Lincoln, it gives us great pleasure to contribute $500,000 to support the construction of the new Community Recreation Center. The new facility is a great fit for Stampak and will help further advance the community as family-oriented and a desirable place to live, work, and play, says Matt Witt from Stampak. The media release goes on to say, to learn more about the Together a Vibrant Tomorrow Capital campaign, contact recreation@westlincoln.ca, and the media contacts are Mr. Chris Fuhr and Miss Wendy Beatty, Coordination of Recreation Services. I want to thank all of the councilors who came out. I want to thank all of the members of the campaign committee that came out for this great announcement. And councilors, please stay tuned, as I'm being told that there will be more than one announcement coming up in the next 2 months. Approximately every couple of weeks, there's probably going to be an announcement. Okay? Thank you. Those are my remarks for the month of May. We will move on to report of committee. And the Planning, Building, Environmental Committee, May 14, 2018 minutes. I accept P7718, P7118, and P6618. The confidential minutes, 2 sets, are under separate cover. Confidential set 1 contains all items for which
Mr.
there
Mayor.
were no conflicts. Yes.
I have a motion for that.
Yes, you do. And confidential set 2 contains Councillor Bell's conflict item. Councillor Chichuk, you have the resolution.
I do. And you did a very good job of reading most of it, but moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Trombetta that the minutes of the open session portion of the May 14th, 2018 Planning, Building, and Environmental Committee meeting be accepted and the recommendations contained therein and be approved with the exception of items P77-18, P71-18, P66-18, and P72-18. And that the confidential minutes set 1 relating to that portion of the closed session deliberations of May 14th, Planning, Building, and Environmental Committee meeting be accepted, and that the minutes remain confidential and restricted from the public disclosure in accordance with the exemptions provided in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Thank you, councillors. You've heard the motion read out by Councillor Chichuk and seconded by Councillor Trombetta. There's a new one, I guess, that's been added here, so I'm seeing on my list P7218 too as well. Is there any questions or comments about this resolution?
Is that the one I can pull up at most moment, Mr. Mayor, or no?
It's on there.
P7.
77
So P72-18.
It's segregated. We'll deal with it right after this.
Oh, okay, sorry, okay.
Okay, so we have, as far as exceptions, as far as different items here, we've got 6 itemized items, so that's going to be one of them.
Okay.
Okay, so seeing no questions or comments, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried.
Mr. Mayor, the second motion with regard to the planning minutes is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Trombetta that the confidential minutes set 2 relating to the portion of the closed session deliberations of the May 14th, 2018 Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting be accepted and the minutes remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with the exemptions provided in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Chichuk and seconded by Councillor Trombetta. Let me just read this again. The meeting be accepted. Ms. Langley, do you want to explain this?
Through you to members of council, this would be the segregation of part of the closed session minutes that relate to Councillor Bell's conflict item. He can remain in the room. This is just a motion to approve, and he just wouldn't vote because that's his conflict.
So am I to understand that this is item P7718?
No.
No, through you, those are the confidential minutes set 2.
Okay, okay.
We'll deal with that one after.
Okay, all right. Please note Councillor Bell will not be voting on this, as this is his conflict. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that's carried. So now we'll move on to P7718, which is also Councillor Bell's conflict, page 64. Who has that motion?
P77.
I got 71.
P77.
P7718.
Yes, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chichuk, that item P7718 from the May 14, 2018 Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting be approved. That item P77-18 legal matter OMB appeal to comprehensive zoning bylaw Phelps Homes The township solicitor, Mr. Tom Richardson, was directed to investigate and report back at the May 28th council meeting with respect to a legal matter, specifically as it relates to an OMB appeal to the comprehensive zoning bylaw by Phelps Homes.
Thank you, Councillors. Moved by Councillor, you've heard the resolution moved by Councillor Trombetta and second by Councillor Chichuk. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Councillor Gannon?
I was just wondering if this was the, no, not yet.
Second one. Okay. And that motion carries. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, next we'll move on to P7118. This is also Councillor Bell's conflict, page 59 and 60. Councillor Chichuk, do you have that?
I do, Mr. Mayor. And this is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Trombetta. That item P71-18 from the May 14th, 2018 Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting be approved. That would be item P71-18. The report PD 070-18 regarding Wade Road removal of holding residential R1B zoning and OMB appeal, Part Lot 8, Plan M97, OMB file PL 170875, related Township File B10/2017 WL, dated May 14th, 2018, be received, and that a change in the zoning of a portion of the property as shown at Attachment 1 be supported to rezone from environmental conservation to residential low density, R1B, as per Attachment 3 to this report, and that minutes of settlement be prepared by Township Legal Counsel to reflect this proposed zoning change with the following conditions: that the remaining land surrounding the building lot be conveyed to the ownership of the Township of West Lincoln, and that the size and configuration of the area to be rezoned be reduced in depth as illustrated in Attachment 3, such that all lots fronting onto Leslie Court have direct connection to the ultimately Township-owned floodplain lands, and that a restoration landscape plan be completed and approved by Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, with recommended works being completed by Phelps Homes, and that a development agreement to be signed in order to ensure street extension of the Hammerhead, sidewalk extension to walking bridge, street lights if any, hydrants if any, cash in lieu of parkland, and chain link fencing of township-owned lands, if required, are installed to the satisfaction of the Township of West Lincoln prior to a building permit being issued, and that Phelps Homes Limited provide a statement to the Township of West Lincoln that protects the township from any liability should the basement of the new dwelling be damaged in any way from flooding or heavy rain, and settlement occur on a without cost basis, and that a bylaw be signed to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the corresponding minutes of settlement, and that the proposed settlement be presented to Phelps Homes Limited for consideration, and that should Phelps Homes Limited concur with the settlement proposal, Township Legal Counsel be and are hereby authorized to contact the Ontario Municipal Board and inform them of the solution that has been reached, once all documents are signed by both parties, and that the township understands that the neighboring property owners wish to present their arguments to the Ontario Municipal Board, and Phelps Homes Limited shall be required to provide appropriate responses to the Ontario Municipal Board. Mr. Mayor, that item was before committee, and it lost at that particular on that particular evening.
That's correct. So, Councillors, you've heard the resolution moved by Councillor Chichuk and seconded by Councillor Trombetta. And as Councillor Chichuk said, this resolution, item P71-18, was lost at our committee meeting. Is there any questions or comments at this time? Councillor Langley, I just gave you a decrease in pay. Miss Langley.
Through to members of council and for members of the public, just to clarify, if this motion is carried this evening when they vote on it, that will confirm the actions of committee that it would be lost. However, if they vote it down, then they've defeated the decision of the committee, and the item would be put back on the table for disposition by the council.
Thank you. Is there any questions or comments about that, or any clarification as to if you vote one way, it means this. If you vote the other way, it means that. No? Everybody understands? I will ask all those in favor.
sorry. Councilor Bell has a conflict on this item?
Yes, but he doesn't have to leave the room.
No, I
Yeah.
wasn't asking that.
Okay, sorry. Yes, you're right, Councilor Chichak. This is Councilor Bell's conflict. So, all those in favor? I see none. That is lost. Yes, go ahead, Slainer.
Through you, it would be appropriate to put the motion back on the table for consideration by council as to how you would like to dispose of this matter. It's the same motion without the beginning. It's just the motion and the report recommendation.
So it's the motion and the report, again, moved by Councilor Chichak and second by Councilor Trombetta. Is there any questions or comments or amendments at this time?
Oh, God, you're pulling me.
Councilors? Comments or questions or amendments? Councilor Chichak?
Mr. Mayor, I think this is the appropriate time at which I would like to entertain, council to entertain an amendment to that motion that would deal with the slope stability concerns that were expressed at our planning committee meeting, and that we add after the words extension of, in brackets, hammerhead, we would add the slope stability assessment report would be included. So we would be looking for an additional report to come forward at that as part of the settlement. And that 2, a new F, that mediation be agreed to, and, which would go on to a new G, and the old F becomes G.
Which says settlement occur on a without cost basis.
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
And at the appropriate time, I wish to speak to that, but I think Councillor Ganan wanted to ask some questions, so.
For that amendment, we have a mover, Councilor Chichak. We have need a seconder. Councilor Ganan will second that. Comments or questions to the amendments first? Seeing none?
No, I'll speak at the main motion.
Okay, thank you. So seeing no more comments or questions to the amendment, I will call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Now, the main motion as amendment, comments or questions? Councillor Chichak, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I speak to the motion because as chair at the committee meeting, I didn't speak very much, and I allowed committee to put forward their concerns with this particular piece of property. And subsequent to our planning committee meeting, I have taken great time to look at what issues came forward that night and to what concerns we should have, we should turn our minds. And certainly, I worry about the issue that was brought to the table by another councillor about the slope stability. I worry about the fact that we look at floodplain mapping and that we're very careful to allow the Conservation Authority to have their appropriate say with regard to floodplain mapping. But more importantly, I look to the opportunity to use our staff and not to end up in front of a very lengthy, costly board decision under the old OMB rules, which are very regulated and require extensive expertise to be made available. But I look at the issue of the fact that mediation on this particular item gives opportunity for everyone to have a say. And for that reason, I would hope that we would be able to look at an opportunity to mediate a settlement on this with Phelps, that the mediated settlement would reflect what it is that our staff have suggested be the settlement we reach, and to the fact that we never lose public access to the bulk of this particular piece of land, and that we do not compromise completely or fence off from public opportunity this property. And it's only after grave consideration and certainly advice from our legal counsel that I put forward that amendment and hope that I gain the support of the bulk of council. Thank you.
So just to be clear, we're not voting on the amendment. We've already done that. This is to the main motion.
Main motion.
Thank
Yes,
you,
you're right,
Councillor.
Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gannan?
Thank you. I've also been waiting to have some things clarified about that. I'm very happy that this discussion is happening again, because I think there were a lot of misinformation, misunderstandings, especially on the part of the public. As you heard the motion and all of that, it probably sounded like a lot of gobbledygook, and we needed to have some guidance from our clerk in terms of the right way to vote on such a thing. So I had a few comments. So one, I said there's been a great deal of confusion about what the planning meeting vote actually meant. What with all the noise in the hallway during our closed session and the comment I later heard about how the residents had won at that, I find it all very troublesome. It seemed to me that many of the residents who left that meeting on May 14th thought that that was the end, that it was over and done, and that, Phelps would no longer have that building opportunity on this property that they own. And so for clarification purposes, please, Mr. Treble, if you would, what is the end result of that vote as it was? Does it mean it was over?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no. What would happen if the decision of committee was carried by council? It would have guaranteed, I believe, a full hearing before the OMB, where an individual from Toronto or a panel from Toronto would come out and have a brand new hearing to determine whether or not Phelps should have the entire land, which was in private property, identified as a building lot.
Okay, so as simply as you can, because I know that you're definitely a planning expert, but for the general public to understand, this is an issue that when we went against staff and voted to not support some negotiation, did that assume then that there would be any access to that property for the public just because it had been at that step? We'd stopped it and people could just go on as they had been before.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll try and be simple. The decision of council to turn the report down left all of the lands in private ownership. The recommendation of staff is somewhat of a compromise in the sense that we're attempting to get as much land in public ownership through this process as possible, so the conveyance of the floodplain and some of the land immediately adjacent to some of the lots on Leslie Court, trying to get that into public ownership. It does mean that Phelps achieves one building lot as a result of this process for one single-family house, and I think that's where the neighbors have the most concern, is with that building lot. The staff report, though, does achieve a big bulk of what the property owners are asking for, in the sense that they get public enjoyment and public benefit for probably at least 3/4 of the property.
Okay, thank you. So I sort of went on from that as well. There was a lot of discussion with the public about the floodplain and the 100-year flood mark, and I know that there were several questions from our end about just what that means, because we all have a different idea of how far up the water comes. So is there any way that floodplain marking as designated could be overturned? Like, is there somebody else that could be called in to redefine that in any way?
Would you like Mr. Treble to answer that
Either
question?
Mr. Treble or Mr. Richardson, whoever feels. Mr. Richardson, I think that you had some information about that.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, we in fact have explored the possibility of re-examining the floodplain. Sorry. Mr. Mayor, members of council, we have attempted to obtain the advice of someone who does floodplain mapping for the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. The advice that has come back is, yes, they could go and look at the flood line to determine whether it's appropriate or not, but this is what the consultant then concluded his brief summary of the work that would be undertaken. The above work may be irrelevant, as only NPCA has the right to define the floodplain, and they use approaches/procedures that are defined by their staff and the appropriate provincial agencies, the MNRF. So it would be up to the Conservation Authority to have the final say as to where the flood line is.
Thank you. So there's no negotiation to be done there. They have the ultimate say, and we have their up-to-date reports. Okay, thank you both for that information. I think what I'm concerned about is that the residents would feel that that vote, when they left on the 14th of May, they really felt that they had been supported, and truly they had been supported as much as we could do so. But ultimately, if we stick with what we planned, what the vote was on the 14th, then the end result is Phelps will take the rest of this, will go to the OMB, and whatever happens there, happens there. But the chance of negotiating public input and public space usage on the 20 Mile Creek property, that opportunity has been lost.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would agree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call the vote on the main motion as amended. All those in favor? On the main motion as amended. Yeah. Because we've already dealt with the amendments, now we're on the main motion. And that motion carries. Okay, I think it's time that that I have to step down. So the P72? Okay. Who has that motion? Councillor Trombetta, do you have that?
Are you sure it's not P66?
Good night, sir.
Councillor Trombetta, go ahead.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chichak, that item P72-18 from the May 14, 2018 Planning, Building, Environmental Committee minute meeting be hereby approved. Sorry. Wow. There was a big line through it and I couldn't really read it.
Councillors, this resolution is moved by Councillor Trombetta and seconded by Councillor Chichak. Ms. Langley, please.
Through you, since we hadn't prepared for that resolution to be pulled, I'd just like to read the contents of what that recommendation was.
Sure.
And it is that report PD 074-18 regarding Gerald and Paige Kilt, application for rezoning file number 160101317 dated May 14th, 2018 be received, and that section 3417 of the Planning Act apply, and that no further public meeting is required, and that the application for zoning bylaw amendment 1601-013-17 submitted by Gerald and Paige Kilt be denied. And that would be the motion that you are looking at, and that has been requested to be referred to staff.
Okay, so, councillors, you've heard the resolution. It was denied at committee. We have now pulled it. You have heard what Mr. Arians has said. He was under the understanding with staff that it was going to be referred or deferred to a later meeting. There are still more negotiations that obviously Mr. Arians and his the people that he represents are looking to figure out with the township. We denied it. It's being pulled now. So when I call the vote, if you vote for it, then you agree to continue to deny. If you vote against it, it will be lost, at which that time we can then put it back on the floor if you wish to do that. Ms. Langley.
Through you to members of council, when the motion is on the table, if you do wish to refer it as requested, you would just do a referral motion, and then you would neither approve or deny it at that point. So you have three choices. You can approve it as it currently stands to be denied, you can refer it, or you can lose it. But anyway.
Okay, so I guess what we're saying here is that we don't have to go through the loss of the motion. If you want to bring it back on the floor, you can just quite simply refer it. If I get a mover and I seconder, comments and questions, then we can call the vote on referring this. And okay, so Councillor Trombetta moves to refer it. Seconder, Councillor Baalsma.
No. He's got it wrong.
No. He doesn't want to. Councillor Trombetta has already moved the motion on the floor.
Yes, to put it on the floor.
So he doesn't have to.
Oh, sorry, I don't have to.
He wants to talk to it.
He wants to talk.
Okay, Okay, so we're not referring it right now. We'll slow down here a little bit. So it's okay. It's moved and second. It's on the floor. So I'll ask for comments or questions at this time. Councilor Trombetta, please go first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Trouble. Can you just give us a little history of how we got to this point at this moment, Mr. Trouble? I know this building was erected on 20 Road there, and it was used for, if we can refresh my memory, it was used for certain purposes, and then all of a sudden now this came back, I'd say probably 6 to 8 months later. Can you just give us a little history on how this all became to the point where we're at today, Mr. Trouble?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. A building permit was issued for an accessory residential use for personal storage, we were informed, probably about 2 years ago now. I'm going off the top. And then it was brought to our attention, I should say, that there was in fact a business operating out of this building, a blue building that was constructed on the property in question. And so it was not being used for the personal storage that staff were first informed that it was. And as a result of that, a bylaw enforcement order was issued against the property, specifically the building, which resulted in the applicants retaining IBI Group, Mr. Arians, and I believe in November of last year. And staff went away after that meeting to start working on a recommendation report. I think it's safe to say the flavor of the public meeting was not overly supportive towards the business. Staff certainly had concerns as well about the scale and the compatibility of the use in the area and its relationship and impact on agriculture. There was some revisions proposed to the justification report via Mr. Arians' staff, and staff deliberated on that, but still did not feel we had arrived at an acceptable proposal. Mr. Arians is correct in indicating that he has suggested the concept of a temporary use bylaw, but given that we are talking about operating a business accessory to agriculture and the concept of a nursery and tree planting, and none of that has occurred on the property, and yet they have had time to commence those kind of actions, it really brought into question whether we would ever get a proposal that complied with the official plan, hence the staff report that is before you. I'm more than happy as staff to have further discussions with Mr. Arians at committee, or sorry, I should say at council's direction, but I think we have some ways to go to achieve the scale that would be required.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that was the issues that I was having. I haven't seen a formal plan of what they're proposing out there. I've just seen that, I think it was last week, that it was tried to get referred at the 11th hour of the meeting. And like I said, I needed to see a plan or even meet with, I haven't had a phone call from the residents about this property that own this property and to come take a look. All I've heard was the public meetings that were here and what was before us. I wish I'd have seen a plan come forward about this property and dealing with what was envisioned. And it's unfortunate that the building was erected for storage purposes for agricultural, but it kind of turned into a business. And now I see that they've hired a consultant to work with them and beg for leniency at the 11th hour, which was denied, and then again at the 12th hour ask for it again. And I'm just a little troubled with this, and I just wanted to make those comments, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite sure someone else wants to make some comments at the table for now, but just to bring those comments forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rayner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Treble. Mr. Treble, have the owners of this property ever showed up for any of these meetings, public meetings, or anything else?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have the minutes of the public meeting in attendance, so I'm going off the top again. I don't believe they've been in attendance, but I could stand corrected on that.
All right, thank you. I'm going to make some comments, Mr. Mayor. I would appreciate it if you allow me to continue, because I've got some answers to something that's been frustrating for me for a long time. I didn't know why, and I've been doing this now for my 11th year, and I didn't know why Mr. Arians was always against agriculture. He worked with developers to destroy land and put subdivisions on it, and tonight I got my answer. He said quite clearly that anybody who knows anything about agriculture knows that it's an extremely noisy area, and the neighbors shouldn't complain because of the truck traffic, the smell, and the noise. I now understand why Mr. Arians doesn't like agriculture, but I certainly would invite him to come out to my farm. I'm surrounded by 400 acres of soybeans and winter wheat right now that have been quiet since the winter wheat was planted last October. They have not made any noise since. There are 2 very large tractors working 150 acres as we speak right now that will be planted with soybean. And again, that land will be quiet for the next 4 months. I resent the implications that agricultural areas are anything but quiet. If you can't go to the agricultural area to get peace of mind and quiet, you sure as hell can't get it from the cities. So at least I know where he's coming from. I took a long time to figure it out, but I don't agree with this, what's going on right now. He's saying this was agriculture. These people put this building up for devious reasons. They have been doing things that are illegal. They got caught. They're coming here with a tail between their legs. They've hired this gentleman to come here. They had a chance last week. The publications for the township were out on Friday. They could have picked up the reports. Somebody could have showed up on Monday. The owners have never showed up. So as far as I'm concerned, this is just complete against the rules, against the procedures, and they couldn't care less, and now they're coming here at the 11th hour. We shouldn't have to entertain Mr. John Arians on council. We have to in planning. We have no choice. We have to listen to it today from appointments because we have no choice. You make an appointment, we have to listen to it. I certainly didn't want to hear it. I thought it was done 2 weeks ago, and I hope it doesn't come back. My feeling is these people have stepped way over the line. Their lack of interest by showing up confirms the fact that they don't care what they do and they don't care what the township says. And as far as I'm concerned tonight, this should be over as council makes the final recommendations, as it was recommended by committee 2 weeks ago, that this is done, it's finished, and they're going to have to find somewhere else to practice their illegal operation so that the poor gentleman next door can actually enjoy something that Mr. Arian doesn't know is, and that's the country most of the time is very peaceful and quiet, and he has the right to enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Bell. Mike, please, sir.
I thought it was yeah, I've got some concerns. This piece of property started a couple of years ago. One day you go by and there's a culvert going in. Question the culvert. Nobody seemed to know where it come from because they sure didn't come to the township to ask for it. Next thing you know, there was stone going in for a driveway. And then there was a building went up. And the building, they did come forward with it because they were basically caught. And the building was built under a pretense of being personal use. And from there, it was business. Snowplow showed up on the property, employees showed up on the property. And over time, we've got to where we are now. And every step of the way, this individual has not been forthcoming with what's going on that piece of property. My understanding, they did come from another municipality. They couldn't set up shop there, so they come here. I am definitely not in favor of it, simply because, A, it don't belong where it is, under the pretenses that it was put there. So I will be supporting the motion from last week to turn it down.
Councillor Chichak, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and through you to our staff. Can you remind us of what it would be that we would gain, either the proponents or the neighbors, through any further discussion with you and your staff, Mr. Treble? Is there anything that can be achieved to better the town's situation and or the proponent and the neighborhood's situation in further delaying this and sending it back to you?
Mr. Treble.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's safe to say that the benefit, if there was one, would be related to the possibility of finding a business that is a good fit for the area and for agriculture, which perhaps generates a bit more tax revenue than just agricultural land. Having said that, though, that will take some work to massage the existing application that's on the table. But, I think that's the one thing that comes to mind is the fact that if there is some business that works, then there may be some additional tax revenue to be gained from that proposal.
And my second question is that given that tonight's presentation by the proponent's representative, that we heard that there was going to be substantial reductions to the size, scale, scope, whatever, of the proposal is, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but in doing that, does that actually, is that a viable business plan? Or have you been advised of that? And in that reduction of size and scope, would it really do anything to enhance the tax base of the township?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the latest proposal, this actually partly answers a point raised by Councillor Trombetta as well. The original proposal was amended by the applicants based on a report that was attached to our planning report that was in the package for May 14th Planning Committee, starting at page 172. That shows the revised proposal as well as the original proposal. So there was a bit of a plan at a very high level attached to the staff report for Planning Committee. But what they've been trying to achieve is arguing that the business is accessory to agriculture and therefore a permitted use in the agricultural area that really sort of adds value to the agricultural business that's proposed. But right now it's a field of hay and they've never planted the trees, and the trees in the nursery are part of what they're proposing. So the only other way to really go at this, if I may put it that way, is to sort of abandon the agricultural bent and look at it as a home industry. But at that point you're talking very small scale, 2 employees in an accessory building in proximity to the residents. So the amount of tax benefit is minimal at that point, but it would be probably the solution that would fit best on this property.
So one last question, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
The issue of referring this back to staff, if I can tread into the field of concern that I think is the issue between the lines, and that is that in referring this back to staff or in providing, it leaves the door open. But there's that part of this business which is currently operating, which has been there for 2 years, which has become annoying and has never resolved itself and has never planted trees and has never showed the agricultural or associated with agricultural use. That continues to have an opportunity to exist. And I guess that is probably the most difficult thing, because now it has the Hatfields and the McCoys kind of going at why is this continuing to reign. So am I right? If we refer this back tonight, does the business continue to run for yet another season, probably not getting back on our agenda till fall?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I recall the discussion at Planning Committee, the suggestion was to report back in June, with an update so that committee would know exactly what was proposed or what was going on. So it kind of gave us a timeline to make something happen. But regardless, I guess, if I may just add, Mr. Mayor, the concept of making a decision and having it appealed probably allows the proponent to carry on until we get to a LPAT hearing anyway. So it may not go away right away if there's an appeal on the table regardless.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Trombetta for a second time.
So I just want to just say one more thing, Mr. Mayor, and just make a comment. All of us council members here, I don't speak for all of them, but I just know we're all accessible by phone, by email, and all our staff is accessible by phone and email. And by denying this, we are not saying to the public that we are not to hear their proposal. And I encourage entrepreneurs and people coming out and having an idea to do a business and such. But if you're going to do it the back doorway, if you're going to do things not by getting yourself a proper permit, not by reaching out to the resources that you have in this community, by speaking to our staff, if you're going to build a building with saying you're going to do it for something and something else, we
myself, and I can't speak for the rest of the council, but we don't entertain that. And it's not fair for the rest of the public that are doing things the proper way in this community. Again, I just want to say that, you know, I don't speak for all of council, but if you're going to do things the wrong way, there's going to be consequences for you doing it the wrong way. We are here to help the public. We all are here to listen to the public, and we're just a phone call away, and we can get people the proper resources to get their business off on a float. So it's kind of upsetting that this has happened, and it's kind of discouraging that this came forward again, and I just wanted to make those comments, Mr. Mayor, to just put those out on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bosman?
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I just wanted to weigh in here. Generally speaking, I tend to be very sympathetic towards, you know, that entrepreneurial spirit, and I think that's echoed by my colleagues around the table. We're also, and on a personal level, I started a woodworking business and a little home shop, and I grew it to the point where it allowed me to, you know, go on to bigger and better things. And in that time when I was operating a family-based woodworking shop, you know, I made several changes and considerations to the way that I conducted myself so that I wouldn't, in the first place, tick off my neighbors, and if there were concerns, I try to mitigate them, you know, in a neighborly sort of fashion. So it's incumbent upon everyone in our community to be a good neighbor, and sometimes it doesn't work, and then there are legal allowances for people to conduct this, even though their neighbors may not be in full agreement, but because there's legal, these people are asking for exceptions to these rules, and yet they're playing no small part in trying to mitigate. They're haven't shown up to here to plead their case. They don't show, we don't have an opportunity to question them about their intentions. So generally speaking, in the main, I'm very supportive of these applications, and I know how they start and initiate, and then things grow. And when we're willing to work together, amazing things can happen. But I don't see any of this happening, so it's very difficult for me to support something that, generally speaking, I'm very receptive to, and that's the difficult part. So I think that we've all said more or less the same things. We're willing to work with anyone who comes with a plan and a desire to enrich our community with small businesses, with the intention that eventually they grow, and that's happening all over our community. Businesses start in the countryside, and eventually they wind up. We have two recently that are moving into the industrial park, and that's the kind of nurturing aspect that we want in our community. And so we can't be accused of being anti-business, but we can also stick up for our residents and our community, and I think that's what's happening here for those who are playing by the rules and who are working in the system as they find it. So I just want to get that on the record too.
Thank you, Councillor. For a second time, Councillor Trombetta, or Councillor Rayner, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to compliment Councillor Trombetta and Councillor Bilsma on what they just said, because really what we have to deal with here is the fact that we've got people that are doing it, playing their own rules and not following the rules, and the credibility and respect that goes with working with the township. And also, we have an obligation to the people who are honest in our community and want to do things right, and use the township as a tool. Come here and ask questions about how maybe I can do my business better, or how do I follow this, or, I mean, we're also a tool. We're not just a regulatory thing. You come in here and pay the money and get your permit. You could also ask them questions and get directions, get support, get help, or got other contacts. It's a mega place for a lot of information, but it's what we want from the people that come here. We want honest people who want to help the community and want to work with us, and we work with them. And when you've got somebody that plays by these kind of rules, we owe it to the honest people to make sure that their rights are respected, and people that do this don't get away with it. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bell for a second time.
So, just like to say, Councilor Billsman summed it up perfect, and that's exactly what's happening here tonight. And he also stated 2 businesses that started small have now moved into our industrial park, and kudos to them for doing so, and they've expanded and grown. I think that what Councilor Rayner and Councilor Trivetta are saying is the very same thing, so congratulations, Councilor Billsman.
Okay, thank you. So, seeing no more questions or comments, I will call the vote. And do I need to explain the vote again? So it's been denied. So if you vote for, you are denying this application again. I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay, Madam Clerk, I think now is the time that I have to step down and ask Councillor Chichuk to take the chair. And I believe this is to deal with item P6618. Is that correct? Councillor Ganan has the resolution for you, Councillor Chichuk, when you come.
St. Martin's. So that one's coming. That came from what meeting? Admin. Okay. So, for item P66-18, the mayor has a conflict on this item and will not be participating in the discussion or vote. Councillor Ganan, I believe you have that motion.
I do, thank you. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Trombetta that item A61-18 from the May 22nd, 2018.
66.
The only one
Sorry,
I have.
Councillor Ganan, I believe we
Wrong
have.
one?
We are at item A61, P66-18.
Oh, then it's not yours.
You have the wrong item, that's all.
Well, I don't have any others, so that's not me then.
Councillor Rayner has it, sorry.
Then it's
Okay.
I have P66.
Councillor, we've got this a little mumble-jumbled. We're just continuing on with the deficiencies we've determined that the heat has brought to our council meeting. So I apologize, Councillor Ganan. Councillor Rayner, you have, thank you for coming tonight because you have item P66-18.
Just for Doug.
Just for the mayor. I understand that completely.
All right, thank you, Madam Acting Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Trombetta that item P66-18 from the May 14, 2018 Planning, Building, Environmental Committee meeting be approved. Item P66-18, that the correspondence dated April 13, 2018 from Mr. Ron Lane, President of Branch 393 Royal Canadian Legion Villa Senior Citizens Complex, requesting the Township of West Lincoln send a letter of intent to the Niagara Catholic District School Board regarding the purchase of the former St. Martin's Roman Catholic School property, municipally known as 186 Market Street, Smithville, by no later than the deadline of June the 5th, 2018, be received and referred to staff.
That was Margaret Street, right, Councillor Rayner?
Margaret, yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you, councillors. You've heard the recommendation moved by Councillor Rayner and seconded by Councillor Trombetta. Comments, questions regarding the item? Seeing none. All those in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. Ding. Oh, no. It's right there. Okay. Now, I can step back. Thank you so much. That was kind of, that was just
I'm confused, Madam Clerk. Doesn't there another resolution that Councillor Ganan has?
I have to come back.
You would step up and do administration with the exception, then you will step out. Councillor Ganan, or Councillor Chichuk will step back in and do the item that Councillor Ganan has.
This is kind of a dance.
So you're on for number 1 here.
Okay. Okay, so we're moving on to Planning, Building, Environmental Committee. Sorry, Administration, Finance, Fire Committee, May 22nd, 2018 minutes, except A61-18, which is the mayor's conflict. First resolution, minutes with exceptions. Councillor Bell, do you have that, please?
Yes, I do. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Godin that the minutes of the open session portion of the Administration Finance Fire Committee meeting held on May 22nd, 2018 be accepted and that the recommendation contained therein be approved with the exception of items A61-18 and that the confidential minutes relating to the closed session portion of the May 22nd, 2018 Administration Finance Fire Committee meeting be accepted and that the minutes remain confidential and restricted from the public disclosure in accordance with the exceptions provided the Municipal Freedom of Information Protection Privacy Act.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, you've heard the resolution. Moved by Councillor Bell and seconded by Councillor Gann. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. And now is when I ask Councillor Chichak to come back and assume the chair to deal with the mayor's conflict.
If we don't lose weight tonight, I don't know what will happen. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, we're on to item A61-18. Right there, yes, right there. Which is the mayor's conflict, and he will not be participating in the item or voting in any way with regard to this. And Councillor Gann, A61-18, I believe, is yours.
Oh, try this again. It's fine. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Trombetta that item A61-18 from the May 22nd, 2018 Administration Finance Fire Committee meeting be approved. Item A61-18. Whereas, in accordance with Ontario Regulation 444-98, the Niagara Catholic District School Board has now forwarded a letter to the Township of West Lincoln dated March 7th, 2018, which advises that St. Martin Catholic Elementary School at 186 Margaret Street, Smithville is no longer required by the board. And whereas the letter dated April 13th, 2018, the Royal Canadian Legion Senior Citizens Complex, Branch 393, notified the Township of West Lincoln of their interest in building new affordable housing units on the open land and developing the school as a community center for seniors at 186 Margaret Street. And whereas the St. Martin School site is adjacent to our downtown core and a vacant 3-acre site owned by the Township of West Lincoln, which makes this property a significant property and asset to Smithville and our future growth. And whereas Community Hubs Ontario assists local municipalities in repurposing public properties to provide many benefits for communities, including long-term care homes, senior housing, affordable housing, and recreation and youth program support. And whereas the province announced in April 2018 a new comprehensive social purpose real estate strategy that requires the needs of local communities to be considered when it comes to the disposition, acquisition, and use of public property and infrastructure planning. And whereas this strategy includes a surplus property transition initiative, SPTI, that may see the province provide funding to cover property holding costs, such as ongoing operating and maintenance costs, for up to 18 months, during which community groups will be able to find additional partners and develop a long-term business plan to transition projects into community hubs. Now, therefore, the Council of the Corporation of the Township of West Lincoln hereby directs staff to notify the Niagara Catholic District School Board of our joint interest in the St. Martin's Elementary School building at 186 Margaret Street by submitting an expression of interest no later than June 5th, 2018, and that coordinating such an expression of interest requires additional time, up to 18 months, within which to investigate the needs of the local community as announced in the comprehensive social purpose real estate strategy of April 2018, and further that staff be and are hereby authorized to explore the concept of a community hub at 186 Margaret Street that may include a variety of different uses, services, and partners to be determined through investigation, and that the CAO be delegated authority to make application to the province under the Community Hub program as required in order to secure their support, and that staff report back to Township Council no later than August 13th, 2018 Council meeting of staff findings and the need to submit an offer to purchase the subject property no later than September 3rd, 2018 in accordance with the school board letter dated March 7th, 2018 or an alternate date as supported by the school board in response to the expression of interest.
Thank you, Councillor Gann. I don't think we need bylaws or anything further today. We've even gone to longer paper for your motions. Anyway. Having a motion duly moved by Councillor Gann and seconded by Councillor Trombetta. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Councillor Rayner.
Thank you. How do we know how much to offer? Are they going to present what they feel the offer is? Are we just going to make out of the blue, pick a number and send it to them and hope they accept it?
Just a moment. Well, I think we'll go to staff for that.
Through you to members of council, this is just a letter of expression of interest. There will be further discussion at a later date, likely in closed session if that was where we were going to go, and those kind of discussions would occur then.
All right, thanks.
There's no commitment other than the fact we're expressing an interest and want to reserve our space in the right to negotiate with the province. So this opens the door, and that information will come down the pike a little bit later.
I understand that. I was just wondering, obviously, to me, it's from their end. They have to ask us what they feel that they should be getting for the property in order for us to negotiate. I think the ball is in their court to do that, and it's up to us to respond if we're interested or not, but that's down the road.
Baby steps.
Okay.
Okay. Did I see a hand here? No?
No.
Okay. Seeing no other comments? All those in favor? That motion carries. Mr. Mayor, you can have your chair back. Thank you.
Okay, so I believe that we are done with Administration, Finance, Fire Committee, and we can move on to Public Works, Recreation, Arena Committee, where there is no conflicts of interest. May 22nd, 2018 minutes, resolution. Councilor Trombetta, you have that resolution, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Chichuk that the minutes of the open session portion of the Public Works, Recreation, and Arena Committee meeting being held on May 22nd, 2018 be accepted, and that the recommendations contained therein be approved with the exception of items.
Councilors, you've heard the resolution moved by Councilor Trombetta and seconded by Councilor Chichuk. Is there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Councilors, the definition for reconsideration and notice of motion to rescind is there for your viewing pleasure. We will now move on to other business. Starting my right, your left, Councilor Bell.
Thank you, Mayor Journey. Well, I would have liked to talk about the Kiwanis, but you've done that. You've done the business awards. St. Martin's is done. Evans Ride's done. MERS is done. So, no, I got nothing to say. Thank you.
Stole your thunder, buddy.
I thought that maybe, just maybe, that the person who coordinated this whole entire event might have one little tidbit information to share with us that none of us knew about that whole chapter night.
It was a great evening, and the funds raised were very good. We did quite nice, thanks to the Kiwanis, the community, and one of our fellow councillors walked away with a whole cooler full of wine. She's wearing white tonight, but I'm not going to say who. But it was a great evening. It was enjoyed by all.
Good.
And I don't know if I covered everything, but we're always looking for new members, so you'll have to check the Facebook. We've changed our June schedule now, so it's not every Tuesday as in the past. So,
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Very good. Councilor Bosman? Nothing? Councilor Ganan?
Just a couple of quick things. One thing had to do with the Evans Ride, and that is that members of the New Kiwanis Club are actually volunteering at that event.
Yes,
so we're sort of getting out there. I also wanted to make a comment about the lunch tomorrow, but my comment was more directed at how pleased I was to see that the Ag Center is being used so well. There are lots and lots of events there, and every time I see another one advertised, I think it's terrific. And the third thing I wanted to talk about is Friday of this week, June 1st, is the Age Friendly Advisory Committee meeting, and our guest speaker this time is Mario Dudavitas, who is the CEO of the Niagara Workforce Planning Board. So I invite members of council who would like to come out and listen and are able to. Mario is going to be talking to us about West Lincoln demographics, and we're going to follow that up with Ms. Wendy Beatty and Ms. Vanessa Holm sitting in to listen to that and then taking part in the discussion afterwards, looking at programming for older adults and adults who are at various stages of ability. So our meeting's open to the public, which is why I mention it now, so hopefully
And
somebody
here in the
will.
council chambers.
And it's here in the council chambers, 9:30 Friday morning.
9:30.
June
Okay.
1st, it will be
the 1st.
June.
Very good. Very good. Councilor Chichuk?
Well, You did steal everyone's thunder, Mr. Mayor, and that's
There's
fine.
one left that you were at quite happily with your nephews.
Oh, yes, I'll get, you're absolutely right. And, but what I wanted to say was that there's no reflection on the fact that I slurred my words or in any way didn't know what I was doing or went to the wrong motion. That was nothing to do with the bottles of wine that were in that cooler that I won at the Kiwanis event, but it was a very good event, and I do agree and compliment Councillor Bell, his wife, and the entire committee for the hard work they put into that Kiwanis event. Yes, there was the Public Works and Safety and EMS open house here at the town grounds last Wednesday, and I got to say, along with a number of councillors from around the Horseshoe, there was a lot of very enthusiastic short people who really enjoyed the big monster trucks and the fire trucks and didn't even care whether he had his iPad with him, at least the one I had. Usually wants to see me when he has an iPad, and he gave up all that technology and jumped and crawled all over those trucks. Every kid I saw there was enthusiastic, eating hot dogs and going through bouncy castles. It was a great event. Kudos to our staff for the coordination yet again of that event. And one last thing, because Councillor Ganan's always got all the dates up straight. 5 p.m. Friday night, Caister Community Center Fun Fair.
Yes.
I marked that down because you told me once before. Anyway, so be there, be square.
And
Thank you.
Kiwanis are also helping out at that, so.
The Kiwanis are helping out at that. You're absolutely right. And then there's a steak dinner at the Henley Course on Saturday, but goodness gracious.
Lots going on.
Lots.
Yeah. Councillor Trombetta, other business?
No, nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rayner?
No, not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Captures, I think, just about everything that is going to happen and has happened in the municipality of West Lincoln. So, new items of business, note only for items that require immediate attention, direction from the council. Is there any tonight? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, we'll move on to bylaws. And Councillor Balsma, you drew the short straw.
Yes, I think I'm the fat lady tonight. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Terry Bell that leave be granted to introduce bylaws 2018 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, and 54. And that the same shall be considered to have been read a first, second, and third time with one reading, and are hereby adopted, and that the mayor and the clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and affix the corporate seal thereto, any rule of this council to the contrary notwithstanding. Oh, sorry. Took out an eye.
Councillors, you've heard the resolution moved by Councillor Balsma and seconded by Councillor Bell. Is there any questions or comments about any of the bylaws? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
You read them well.
I can count.
And that is carried. Okay, the adjournment. The mayor declared the meeting adjourned at the hour of 9:02. Thank you, everyone. Scott, do you want to see me?